Seriously, thank you so much to everyone who supports me on Patreon. Your generous backing is truly awesome. It is how I manage to keep making this content and much more a reality. Every little bit helps keep me going, and it means I can keep providing you with content full time. A special thank you goes out to Lorena Giselle Garcia, Jamar Meeks, Martin Cabrera Pavez, Elena Sosadeco, Diego Navarro Lunares, Kay Fernandez, Rodolfo Fernandez, Lucius Lau, Taylor Hunter, Jackson Frazier, Allison Stalker, Munya Chison Week. Thank you all so much for your support. All right. Well, welcome, Max, to the ADC Podcast. So great to see you, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a while. It's been a minute.
My gosh. Okay, so did we meet, I want to say 2011, 2010-ish? Like, I mean, it's got to have been...
Did we meet at like one of Mark McDonald's classes? I know we were in there together, but it's like, is that where we met?
No,
or
I don't think so.
No.
You and me, I think we're both working, or I think I was working on a project at Cosmic Toe Studios, and I think I was there like maybe 1 week before you got there, and I remember it was you, and then I think Giovanni Olivares also had started pretty close to when you started, I think. I want to say it was Cosmic Toe Studios when we met, like 2011-ish, like around maybe even 2010.
It was probably 2011. I think I was there for 9 or 10 months before I went over to Nickelodeon. So I spent like most of the time, and it was 2011.
Yeah, like I forget if you had just graduated. Were you just out of college?
No, let's see. I guess the timeline, I graduated in 2007 and then moved out to California in beginning of 2009.
Ah, okay.
And so it took me like 2 years exactly to finally break in.
Right? I mean, I think especially too, you were coming from the East Coast, right? Is that where you're originally from, or?
Yeah, Florida, thereabouts, which is also where I met my wife when I was at art school at Ringling in Sarasota.
Nice. I want to say you guys were still dating when I knew you. I don't know if you guys had already gotten married.
We I think we had, what did we do? No, I'm thinking about the first. Yeah, I think we're still dating at that point. But it was also like, because I remember I was still living in Santa Clarita when I finally asked her to marry me, which I should have done ages ago, honestly.
Yeah, you find a good one. You want to just for me and my wife, like we were together, I want to say, for almost a decade before we actually got married. And then after that, a few more years before we decided to have kids. And that's another thing, since we last spoke, we're both fathers. So congrats, man, on being a dad.
I know. It's wild. She just turned 9. She was a Christmas Eve baby.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Do you have one or two children? I was trying to remember.
Just one and done for us.
Yeah. We have a 2-year-old, Ruby, and she is just, my gosh, like being a dad. I mean, especially like when I draw, even if it's like non-professional or just whatever, especially like where my Cintiq is or anything, she's got to be like right up on it and like grabbing my pen and starting to do her thing. And I don't know if you're passing along any of the creative genes to your daughter, but I feel like mine has definitely got the creative bug in her.
Yeah, she definitely enjoys drawing, and I do find, like, over the last couple of years as I've moved kind of away from digital and more just like classic pen and paper and stuff. I find she imitates me more, or she kind of like wants to do what I'm doing more if I'm working like with pen and pencil and watercolor and stuff.
Right.
Like she's interested in the Cintiq, but yeah, it's like when she sees me drawing on paper, then she wants to start drawing on paper.
Maybe it's just more magical. I know, like, for me, my dad was the person in my family who was, an artist and would like to draw. He never did it professionally, but I remember just like kind of passing by his room. He'd either be doing a crossword puzzle or drawing. And if he was drawing, I'd hop up on the bed and just literally like press my face as close as I could. And his thing was he would always leave certain parts of the character empty or missing. And he's like, well, you draw the face, or you draw this little gizmo over here. And it was always like an invitation to come try. It was never like, hey, like, this is what I do. You shouldn't touch my pencils or this or that. Like, it was always something that was just very much like for me and him. My mom didn't draw. My sister really didn't get into it. But it was something that was just really special. My dad passed in 2018, and my mom ended up giving me a lot of his artwork that I had never seen. When they were dating, he would actually draw things for my mom, like love notes, but he would have like full illustrations, which I thought was so wonderful. Made me look like crap because I never did that for my wife. So, talk about, I'm not as romantic, I guess, but
yeah.
But again, I think those moments, now being a father, I think a lot of that stuff really like helps me kind of relate to my daughter a lot more. And she's really into mermaids right now. She likes CGI stuff, but like I really try and like show her a lot of 2D stuff, and I think I showed her Lion King, Sleeping Beauty, and then Little Mermaid. And she completely like could care less about any of the movies except Little Mermaid. She absolutely just laser focused. So I've been doing nothing but drawing mermaids. I kid you not. Like every day I draw like maybe 6 mermaids a day. And I'm practicing my Ariel right now because she really, wants Ariel.
Yeah.
It's got to be on model too. She can tell if it's not, quite there. So
it's cute.
Tough crowd,
Yeah.
So
my daughter has like, she has like a pretty light media diet, but I do try to like, I showed her some of the younger age Ghibli movies early on.
Nice.
Yeah, it's been a while. I feel like I should show them to her again. It's like at that age, it's like if you show them something at like 5, they might not even remember it anymore.
Wow. And they're so powerful too. I mean, there's so many layers, to Miyazaki's stuff. It's like I feel like I'll watch it and then like watch it again and just like get more out of like each time I watch a lot of his films. I think Mononoke in particular, I couldn't even pay attention to the story because I forget the name of the character that has like a possessed arm, and it's like literally just a bunch of all these like little squirmy eel type things. And I just kept looking at that like, how do you do that? Like what kind of a brain can think of like that or even execute it on paper? I mean, that's incredible. But yeah, my daughter's a little too young to get into the Miyazaki stuff yet, but I'm no longer in California. I don't know if I told you that I moved to North Texas now, and we have Cinemarks out here, which are pretty good, and they have a lot of great animated stuff that shows all the time. And one of my nephews lives out here now, so he's like my movie buddy. We go and watch like all kinds of like animated stuff, and it's just really fun.
That's cool.
But for you, like, was there any other artists in your family, or were you sort of like the explosion that just happened, and they're just like, what the heck? Max is just
So my mom was a freelance illustrator, and my brother, who's like 7 years older than me, he pursued. At first, he was like interested in architecture, but he ended up going to school for graphic design. So, like already in my house, there were artists.
Nice.
And I think it was just kind of one of those things where it's like, well, my mom's there drawing, I'm going to draw too. So there were always the art supplies and stuff. And it was, I don't know, it's just cool to see like, oh, like you can make a living from this. Like you can do this as a job.
Which seems odd, right? Like at first, I don't know, like what in Florida or like where you grew up. Where I grew up in California, like where the industry was, I was still so far from it that people were like drawing's not something you do. That's just something that's sort of there, but it's not something you do as like a career choice. That's just from where I was from. It was like literally like you'd either go to college or you'd work at the docks, where stuff was coming in. That's it. You know what I mean? Like that's the highest you can aspire to. Never anything like magical or special. But you said, so your mom was doing freelance, and did your dad have sort of like a safe job so mom can do like, awesome
kind of, yeah. So like in the early days, so like my dad does a lot of kind of like entrepreneurial stuff. He's not an artist, but he does a lot of stuff in the like kind of donor research philanthropy space.
Wow.
Yeah, which this is like back in the 80s, so it's like you couldn't just Google this sort of stuff.
No.
But he, while he was trying to get that off the ground, my mom was working in illustration to help make ends meet. And then, like in the 90s, when my dad kind of finally kind of like found a job, and he was making enough money that like my mom just sort of like immediately retired from being an illustrator. Like which I didn't realize until years later, was that she didn't really like being a freelance illustrator.
What? Whoa.
I mean, her art journey is kind of long and circuitous, but once she had the opportunity to sort of step away from making art professionally, she did.
Wow.
But I still kind of had the bug. I still just like, I don't know, I picked up drawing from her and just kind of kept going.
That's amazing, because a lot of times the people I met in the animation industry, like some of them have really like horrific stories where it's like, I hid this from my parents. If my parents found out I was doing this, they'd cut me off or something. And that was so alien to me. It was so foreign. I mean, my parents, didn't necessarily like know what to do with me. So when I showed this interest in drawing, they're like, "Oh, great, he's got something he likes to do," and it keeps him quiet. It keeps him out of trouble, and great, like go with it. So I find like it's really fortunate for some of us to have parents that were, very supportive, maybe even recognized we might have some talent, some, skill, determination, some of the ingredients or the building blocks of what you will need later,
It's funny, like growing up in a house with artists, it's a double-edged sword in that, on the one hand, it's like, I owe my pursuit of art largely to, like, oh, I lived with artists. But at the same time, you kind of develop some complexes around it. It's like, I'm like 5 and I'm already like the 3rd most skilled artist in the house.
Wow.
It's like, and so you kind of develop like a complex, and it's the kind of thing that I've dealt with like pretty much my whole life, really, just like confidence in myself and my art, and also just like ego as an artist, not like the egotistical sort of way, but like ego in the sense of, especially as a young artist, it's like you get this title as a kid. You're the artist. Like at my school, I was the artist. Everybody knew, like, oh, Max is the artist. You don't get to have titles like that. It's like if like a kid wants to be a fireman, he can want to be a fireman, but he's not going to get to. He's not like Billy the fireman in second grade. But so it's like you have this title, and suddenly you're like,
you're it.
You really want to hold on to that, and you can get really sensitive about it. And so it's like a double-edged sword.
Got it. So
basically,
you're in school, you're starting to get recognized, by your peers and by other. Was there any other like artists in school that also kind of challenged you? Like, was there sort of like, I don't want to call it like maybe a rivalry or something, but there's always
absolutely, yeah.
There's always another one somewhere that's you're just like,
yeah. There was. I want to say it was second grade, but it might have been third or fourth, where somebody came into the school and he was an artist too. And I still remember very clearly like the comic book he made. And he was so I was kind of coming from like my background, such as it is at like that age. Okay. I was very much into like Sunday comics, so like Calvin and Hobbes, Peanuts, that sort of world. And he came from much more of a like Marvel Comics kind of world. So like kind of, and I think it's like kind of early mid 90s. So like Liefeld was in vogue, and he was trying to imitate that. And what he made, it was really cool looking. He made this like superhero, and nice. he looked super cool and rad, and everybody was like, wow. And of course I was just like insanely jealous and very much like from that point on, I was very like, I kind of approached art as like, oh, I need to be like really skilled. I need to like, I need to learn I need to like learn the anatomy. I need to learn all this stuff, which, is like, can be positive on one hand, but also I was like, I wasn't making the art that I enjoyed anymore. It's like, I enjoy cartooning. I wanted to do Calvin and Hobbes. And suddenly I just sort of was like, oh no, I need to do Marvel.
Right.
I need to do superheroes. I need to do like tough, people beating the crap out of each other kind of stuff.
Like more kind of like, I don't want to say like more masculine style, because I think cartoons, lean more on like the lighthearted, fun, funny. But it is kind of interesting that you say that, because in a way, this person coming into your life kind of also maybe like gave you the little building blocks to what you would actually use in your career working in action. So in a way, maybe like, there was this little seed that was planted, like, hey, at some point you might actually need some of this Marvel stuff. Some of these explosions and some of these fight scenes might actually be, come in a little handy later on.
Yeah. No, like ultimately it all is like a rich tapestry, and you are just like a result of all of this. I'd say like kind of pivotal moments for me is like, seeing Sunday morning cartoons, seeing like Disney movies, especially like Little Mermaid, Lion King, stuff like that. Then like this guy's comic book.
Wow.
And then in middle school, discovering anime. Again, this is like in the 90s. So like discovering anime was,
it was
like everybody knows anime now, but it's
anime was a tab for me, at least. It was a taboo thing that like, if it wasn't Dragon Ball Z, it was like really like graphic stuff. And my parents let me watch and, pretty much see anything, and it's weird because my wife talks about not being allowed to watch The Simpsons, and I'm like, what? Why? Why not? I'm like,
yeah, no, it was, I came up and it was like it was like Japanimation, those old ads, and it showed, you know, like Ninja Scroll and Akira, Ghost in the Shell. It was like, it's cartoons but violent, and that was the pitch for it. And so it was sort of like, oh, Japanese cartoons are just like really violent cartoons. But actually the anime that I found, that I discovered, that like blew my mind was Tenchi Muyo. I saw an illustration from it, and you know, so at that time I had like no direct exposure to anime, and seeing that, I think what I liked about it was, like, I didn't really like doing the Marvel thing, even though I felt kind of obligated to do it.
Right.
But I felt like anime sort of bridged that gap of, oh, like I can kind of be cartoony, I can be fun, but then I can also, you know, be serious and be technical.
Tell a great story, like a really compelling drama, or like something of that nature, right? Because the stories were a lot deeper, you know, especially, first off, you know, for any of you discovering a manga for the first time, it's backwards, you know, that's the first thing. You're just like, oh, like, what is happening? You know, why is this book laid out in this way? And then you start flipping through, and most of the, you know, it's all black and white for the most part, at least the stuff I was looking at. And it just, again, it's so magical. It's like nothing I'd ever seen before. And again, like I said, you find an artist, or you find somebody who just blows you away. And I think, again, around middle school, for myself as well, I didn't live in the district where I went to middle school, so I had to go to the library after school for like maybe 3 hours until my mom got off of work. And I had a good friend who just turned me on to the anime or manga section in the library. And for me, that was like the internet. You know, I think I'm a bit older than you, but the internet was not a thing yet, you know. So literally, gosh, this must have been like 1990, 91 or something. But again, you know, just going to that section, sitting down with some paper, you know, always lined paper. I never really had like really nice artist, you know, paper. And we just be, you know, drawing constantly, like we're possessed or something, you know, constantly just wanting to, I don't want to say mimic, but like reflect what we were seeing on paper, almost like a parrot, you know, hearing something and just boom, you know, shooting it right back. Just as a lot of my education when I was younger was, you know, if something happened to show up at the comic shop that, you know, was manga, you know, I would buy it, and I would spend the evening like in bed with like my sketchbook and trying to like just learn through imitation, which was, you know, I was just sort of like trying so hard to like, you know, how do they do it, not realizing like, oh, like they understand anatomy, they understand form and all this stuff. And it's like, maybe if I copy this drawing enough times, I will learn how to draw the human head. Which, you know, looking back on that, you know, there's that era of art, you know, where like everybody was kind of discovering anime and manga, and we're all kind of doing that. we're all just like, oh, if I just trace this drawing, or if I just like follow these exact steps or something, like it'll happen. And most of the time, when it doesn't happen, you know, and it would crush me, you know. And I remember my dad taking me aside and saying, you know, like, you have to practice. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. You know, he kept stressing to me that this was definitely a marathon, not a sprint. You know, allow yourself the time to grow. And, you know, for a kid at that age, you're nothing but impatient, you know. I mean, I would rage quit with my Nintendo and like throw my controller because I couldn't beat something, because I just get so like amped up. And also too, I think I kind of felt this like competitiveness, like this deep. I never played sports, but I felt extremely like competitive with my drawing. Not never to like put another person down or say, "Hey, I'm better than you" or anything.
Yeah.
If anything, drawing always opened the door because I feel like maybe like you had this too. We had like school newspapers and school like things that like people would say, "Hey, can you draw something for our thing?" Or "Here's my yearbook. Can you draw like something super cool?" Or a girl with like super big boobs, or like I would have those type of requests all the time. Just really like random, ridiculous, types of things. But
Yeah.
always loved that it did give us sort of, or I felt a little bit of that identity or something like, well, this defines me in a very like interesting way, and gave a little depth to my personality. Because I don't know if you were like me, I was extremely shy in school and had a lot of trouble making friends. So drawing was actually the thing that was like the cool part of me, where like somebody could be like, "Oh, dude, you draw?" And they would come to me versus me having to like dig up courage to actually talk to someone, which, was so difficult for me.
Yeah.
But
No, for me, that title was like really important to me. And, like I said, it's this, it can become this thing where it's like you have this title, and then you feel like you kind of need to like hold on to this title, or you don't want to lose this, because ultimately, like, what at some point, if you're somebody who grew up being an artist, eventually you're going to have to come face to face with the fact that like you are not a skilled artist, and to become a skilled artist, you got to go back to page one.
wow.
At some point, like you can copy, like copy the Sunday newspaper, you can copy screen grabs from anime, but at some point, like you got to get a pencil and paper, and you got to start like, drawing a still life. You need to start drawing boxes. You need to do these like fundamental things, and you're going to be bad at them. And my problem was that I avoided that like moment as hard as I could. I would not accept that. Like, I was not necessarily confident in myself as an artist, but I felt that like I was not a beginner, so to speak.
Got it.
It's like drawing a still life is what beginners do. But I've been drawing my entire life. I've been like copying from manga and whatever for like years. So like I've got a long way to go, but I'm not a beginner, and I don't need to crack open chapter 1 of these books. I should be able to move on to like chapter 7 or something. and that mistake, that that misunderstanding really haunted me, even through college.
Oh,
and
wow.
Past college, and even like a little bit to today. I'm like still wrestling with like the ramifications of that. Like,
Right.
even through college, there was sort of this sense of like, again, I was really down on myself as an artist, but I couldn't accept that I needed to go all the way to the beginning, because I really, really could not accept that I
Wow.
wasn't a good artist.
That's incredible. I mean, talk about amazing introspection, and you being like this honest with yourself, looking in the mirror and saying, "Hey, like, there's fundamental parts of my drawing DNA that are missing," and and again, like allowing yourself the permission to be human. I mean, like that's the thing I feel like artists do not give themselves the permission to be. I teach a lot now, and I see that so much in students where they're so hard on themselves, and they're just like, if I don't get to this level, it's just like all done for me. It's just sort of like an all or nothing thing. And I think that's, speaks to a deeper, rooted thing in each of us, where we have these, amazing aspirations. We're shooting for the stars and, sometimes not quite hitting it, or we are getting there and we feel a bit of emptiness in that, you know? And I think it's amazing that you can look back now and say like, well, I want to fill some of those empty holes. I want to go back and actually like not be so like like in a rush to get there, you know, because like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think even as guys, we have that thing in us where like we got to get to the top of the mountain, man. We got to get there, you know. And it's just like,
Yeah.
but what about the journey, you know? Like I think now as we're a little older, maybe the journey's become a little more important than just the destination. Now we can, you know, kind of relax a little and like enjoy the process. Go back to chapter 1 and say like, oh my gosh, I can look at it with like a more open mind now, where I'm not going to be offended if I miss something, and I can just allow myself to get those early chapters in. You know, sometimes I felt like drawing was not always enjoyable. I felt sometimes drawing was like pain, you know, like you're actually going through pain to get yourself to where you need to be, you know, and it's like you're constantly fighting this, you know, person in the mirror telling you you're not good enough or your drawings suck or something. And you're constantly like going through that battle and still trying to be, you know, professional and make your deadline, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, you know, it's like Ira Glass says that, you know, your taste always exceeds your abilities. And, you know, that's a really hard thing to come face to face with.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's taken me a long time to sort of come to terms with like my art and where I am with my art, and who I want to be as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And after, you know, so I've been like kind of laid off from animation for like 3 years now, almost.
2023,
like I wrapped
2023-ish, or around there.
Something. Yeah, that sounds about right. Like I worked like 13 years straight, and the funny thing is like once I broke in, you know, I really didn't have time to like mull over my like where I am as an artist or like what I'm doing. Is like I need to go.
Rent's due, so you know?
Yeah, pretty much. It's like I need to just be good or something. I'll worry about the psychological effects later. But now, you know, now that I've been out of work, and you know, like it's like I was out of work, and then I've also sort of made peace with it. Like I don't know if I have a career anymore in animation, but it's given me space now to be like, okay, like I'm back to making art for me. And it's like, now that I have the wisdom, now that I've you know, gotten into my 40s and I kind of know what I know now, you know, I'm sort of trying to start over a little bit. You know, and I found, funny enough, I've also just been like moving away from digital like really hard.
That's incredible too, because you were one of the first people that I ever saw like kind of master the Cintiq and master that, you know, transitional time between, like I said, I'm a little bit older than you, and I do remember when it was like all paper based in the industry. And I think when you were coming in, I'm sorry I'm jumping, you know, further ahead. I did mean to ask you one quick thing before we jump into like modern day. In high school, or really any time in school, did you have a teacher? I always hear like, you know, a lot of times people have like this one teacher that kind of believed in them, or maybe this one teacher that was like, hey, like, have you thought of maybe doing art as a career? Like, did you have anyone like that outside of your family, teacher-wise, that clicked with you or anything?
No, you know, my high school art teacher she's like pretty old, pretty traditional.
Okay.
And it's like I was kind of her star pupil and everything, but I was also like very insistent on kind of blazing my own trail and whatnot. And
nice.
so, you know, it's like I didn't need somebody to tell me that like, oh, you can do this for a living. I think I kind of, by high school, I was pretty clear that like, okay, I'm going to go to art school after high school and then hopefully get into animation. And
did your parents
like that's just how it's going to go.
What were your parents like? What did they like have any kind of advice for you? I mean, obviously you saw your mom, growing up, doing art as a career, and I'm sure experiencing ups and downs with like clients and X, Y, and Z. So like, what was their sort of advice to you, or did they just say, hey, like just go for it, or?
Yeah, I think they were encouraging of it. Like they're like, yeah, fine. Like they were cool with me going to art school. It was Ringling, which was the same school that my brother went to. Again, he's 7 years older than me, so they kind of saw his journey.
Whoa!
And he got into graphic design and was doing it, as a job by the time I was going in. So, I think too, it was like, again, like we were doing okay financially as well. So I don't think there was like we weren't rich or anything, but I feel like the family was comfortable enough that,
right.
My parents weren't like, oh my God, like you need to get a real job or, yeah, so it's like they were cool about it.
And then so Ringling happens, which for those of you out there who don't know, amazing school. A lot of really extremely talented people in our industry come from Ringling. So you're in Ringling, and do you get like a focus? Like, are you like, hey, I want to be a character designer, board artist, an animator? Like, because animation is a very broad sort of thing. There's a lot of jobs within animation. Are you choosing something in terms of like what you want to focus on?
Oh man, here's the thing about my time at Ringling, and oh man, I could talk your ear off about like kind of how
please do
my time at art school went for me. So I mean the short version is like right before I actually started going to the school, I became extremely self-conscious about my work, and especially for just like, I was like gung-ho anime. It's like I even briefly was like, I'm going to move to Japan and I'm going to become a manga artist. Like I was that,
Wow.
Yeah, in like middle school or whatever, but still. But I, like, as I was kind of on my way into, going to art school, I kind of just had this realization about like, I wasn't really happy with what I was doing, but I didn't know what else to do. And I had already kind of committed to this path.
Oh.
And so I was really wrestling with my identity as an artist.
What was this path? Were you like going to CG, or like were you going like somewhere that was so far from what you wanted to do?
Well, I mean, I was just like, what am I trying to say as an artist? I would say that like at the time, I was kind of gearing towards animation still, and storyboarding in particular. I had the good fortune to visit Dreamworks way back. This was when they were animating on Spirit at the time.
Wow. Golden Age. Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it was like my grandmother who lived in California happened to be friends with like Spielberg's secretary, and she was able to get us in to get a tour.
Gosh.
Yeah. So I wandered around. It was cool to see all the animation, and then I happened to see like in a corner somewhere where like all these old storyboards from Road to El Dorado, which was one of my favorite movies.
Nice.
And I was like, oh my God, like you can do this as a job. Like you can do these like half finished drawings and make like a comic book. That's how I was. I was just like, I was so bad at finishing work or doing like finished illustrations. I was like, oh my God, there's a career for people like me who just like cannot finish an illustration. Yes, I will absolutely make 20 half finished drawings in lieu of a finished piece. But so I was like, yes, I want to do storyboards. But when I enrolled at Ringling, I didn't actually enroll in animation because so the traditional animation program was being phased out in favor of CG at the time. So this would be 2002.
Wow.
And I really didn't want to do CG. I really wanted to do 2D animation. Again, just like all the anime was 2D. So just like
exactly.
I didn't want to do 3D. And so their suggestion was like, well, then just go into illustration and you'll get like a solid footing as an artist, and then you can apply it wherever. Which is true.
Not
like,
bad advice.
They teach you. Yeah, they teach you a bit of everything. But yeah, by the time I got in, I was just really unsure of myself as an artist. And so it's like I wasn't applying myself super hard. And on top of that, I also got like really sick. I got ulcerative colitis in my freshman year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Which like basically haunted me for the next 3 years.
Whoa.
And yeah, so it was just like all of that, my time at Ringling. Like I'm grateful for the friends that I made and my time there, and but I didn't get nearly as much out of it as I could have or should have. I just I was just so unsure of myself, and I was a very early adopter of digital work too, and I was just like really pushing that, while the teachers were sort of being like, you should really like still like work traditionally so you can like learn those, there's something about learning how to paint with actual paint that digital art just isn't going to teach you. But I was like, whatever, you're old, you like retired from the industry like 10 years ago, what do you know? I'm the future, man. But it turned out they were very right. But yeah, so like I kind of, those 4 years were not super well spent.
They flew by then. I mean, you're literally like at graduation day probably, and like you're just like, whoa, like now what? Like what do I?
Yeah, yeah. So, and I didn't have. I wasn't confident enough in myself to start like trying to get work in animation. So I kind of tried being a freelance illustrator, which I hated because I wasn't really an illustrator, even though like that's what my degree is in.
Yeah.
And it took a while to kind of work up the courage and work through things. I ended up taking a schoolism class.
Ooh, nice.
Chris Perrin's storyboarding class. This is when he actually taught it. So I did the the one where he actually like critiques your work.
Not the video version, because I think I'd watched the video version one, but but just the video version by itself. Oh my gosh! If any of you are listening, I think it might even still be on the schoolism website.
I think so. Yeah.
What a talent! What an absolute! I have a soft spot in my heart for Canadians, and I think some of the Canadians have been some of the most powerful artists that I've ever met. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. I don't know why they're so intense. But a few, like Darwin Cook was like my storyboard like mentor, and the guy was so. I mean, I'm telling you, like literally, I'll tell you a few more stories, after this one. But Chris Perrin, I mean, talk about an absolute gem of a talent, and that class was just, I think he had taught it when he was doing that one Ashton Kutcher movie. What was that one called? It was like Ashton Kutcher was like a deer or something like that. Open Season or something like that is.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if
I don't.
The video
would have
was
been
around that era, but
this would have been like 2007, 2008. I think he only taught it in person like the one time before he like quickly realized he didn't have the time to do it. But it was great because you had the videos, which were great, but his critiques were like, I mean, he would spend like 45 minutes to an hour on like each person's boards. So,
oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, it's, and like I learned like so much from the critiques, and so much of like the fundamentals of boarding from that, and just kind of seeing like, you think you know how to storyboard and then you realize you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, and really like that was my first actual like education in storyboarding, because everything I did at Ringling was just illustration. They didn't really let you commingle much with the other majors. So, I had that grounding, and then at this point, like 2008 comes along and it's the financial crisis. And so I can't even get like, like a crap job somewhere. And I have to, and so my wife and I was still my girlfriend at the time, but we both decide it's like, well, if we're gonna struggle to find work, we should struggle trying to find the work that we want to get. Wow. And so we did that thing where we loaded up my car and we drove 2,500 miles to California. Wow. And we just figured it out. And I was very, very fortunate that my wife, so she did costumes for film and television, and her occupation scales in a way that storyboard artists don't. Like you can find like a lot of kind of cheap work to pay the bills as a seamstress that, it's like storyboards. You're sort of either like, in the industry or you're just not doing it. So she really supported us for those first couple of years, until I broke in. And there were a few glorious years there where we were both just like working full time in the industry.
I remember like meeting you, and again, this was at Cosmic Toe Studio, which paint a picture for everyone. What was that like? Seeing again, it was in Burbank. It was like in the heart of the animation industry. It wasn't a major, but you had quite a few people from Cal Arts. You had quite a few people from like all different parts of the industry. And
Cosmic Toast was a weird studio in that, a lot of artists ended up passing through it. Yeah. And I didn't realize once it finally closed down, like just what a big deal it was to a lot of artists kind of in that era. Because the thing is, they were more than happy to bring you on as an unpaid intern.
Right.
Like I got an unpaid internship as a storyboard artist, which it just meant that I was their board artist and they weren't paying me. Like there was no mentorship. There was no seasoned board artist that was like showing me the ropes. I was just the board artist in the studio, and they weren't paying me.
They had the Mecca guy too, Andy. I'm trying to remember his last name, Andy something, and he was like the dude, like from Cal Arts, and he brought, I think, a good portion of everybody with him. From Cal Arts, and if you were getting paid at Cosmic Toe Studio, you're doing pretty good, right? Like that was kind of a there were a couple of people who were pulling in a paycheck, although it was very like hit or miss. That it was like once they started paying me, it could be like very intermittent, and I kind of learned from the other employees. It's like, look, if it's Friday and you haven't been given your check, don't ask. Like we've learned not to ask. Eventually it will show up, maybe, possibly, but it was that kind of thing. It was a very like their financials and like what they were doing. They really aspired to be
like the next Titmouse.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
And my favorite story will always be when they were trying to court a big client, which I think was Hasbro. They were trying to get one of the Transformers series.
Oh yeah.
But the studio was just like 5 guys, sitting in this what was like an auto shop, and so what they did, no joke, they invited a bunch of. So we had we had friends come over and bring their like PCs and their Cintiqs and stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And just fill up the space. So instead of like 5 guys that day, there was like 25 guys. So we're all crammed into the space. And it was just like, just work on whatever project you're doing. Doesn't matter. Just like be working.
Oh my gosh.
So it was like some CalArts students. It was just some friends. And also that at one point the owners could come with like the Hasbro reps and looking through the glass door and be like, and here's our studio, here are our artists. Well, anyways, like they did that. They literally did that. And it was like, I don't know. It was so scammy, but it was fun to be a part of it and just to be able to say that, like, I can't believe we're doing this, because they really were like, they'll get the money and then they'll build the studio.
Right.
For it. Thankfully for all involved, like they didn't get the job, but
right. Because that would have been a disaster if
it was all like what they ended up doing was just like little web series stuff. Like we were doing Littlest Pet Shop, things of that sort. And like near the end I was pulling in like a meager paycheck. It was getting paid less than if I'd worked at McDonald's, but the thing is, what it got me and what it got a lot of people was something to put on the resume.
Exactly.
And I was able to leverage that to get my first real job at Nickelodeon. Because now I could say like, oh yeah, I worked at Cosmic Toast. Here are some things that I did at Cosmic Toast. Like, here are some work samples. And so, it's like they like to see strong work, but they also like to see that you've been in a studio.
Exactly.
And that was like just enough to get me my revisionist position on Ninja Turtles.
I do have a little nugget to that story, and my first job in the industry was at Sony, or Adelaide, which later became Sony Animation, and my first cubicle mate, Alan Wan. Me and him had again kind of started together, and
I love that guy.
Yeah, amazing person. If you don't know who he is Ninja Turtles. I mean, he is like the guy. And we had kind of remained friends, and kind of went in different directions. Like I think I had gone more like character design and that sort of stuff. Anyway, I'm talking to him one day, and this is just before TMNT is going to come out, and he's talking to me. He says, I really need more board people. And he's like, do you know anybody? And I said, you know what? There's this guy. I work with him, and he's at a point in his life. And I don't know if you remember this, but you had told me this story, which sounds very similar to a story that your parents had when, it's like, if I just have this much, I can make it. And I told Alan, I said, look, he's super talented. He's really hungry. And I think he could be really good. And he was like, get him a test. And I don't know if you remember, but I was like,
yeah. That's right. Yeah.
It was a very like quick little, like I said, I take no credit, for any of that. But it was just like that conversation we had, we were like, look, man, like, I got to make this work, and you're barely holding on, at Cosmic Toast. And I just thought to myself, like, someone's got to give this dude a shot, because he's super talented. I mean, clearly, like, he can do it, and I didn't think Cosmic Toast was like the vehicle to really give you much more. And I was so fortunate that, again, Alan just so happened to say, like, I need people. I need to, start, looking for some new talent. And I was so happy that he like trusted, that I had a decent enough eye to say, hey, this person, you don't know him. Because I think at first he was like, well, what's he done? You know, because like that's always a conversation. Like, oh, he's from Warner's. He's from, you know, this show or something like that. And I didn't really have that. You know, I just like, look, like,
yeah,
I know this guy's got something. Just go with me on this, you know? And I think you absolutely crushed the test. Because I remember he like called me or this was like, I think I barely had a cell phone at the time. And he was like, yeah, man, I love him. You know, he did such a good job on the test. And what was that like taking your first was that your first real studio test? And this was for the 2012 TMNT show.
Yeah, it was, I guess, technically my third test. I had done a test for, was it Robot and Monster? It was another Nickelodeon show.
Okay.
that I made it to the interview,
nice.
but didn't make the cut. Although years later, I would meet with the producer on that, Chuck, and not Chuck. I can't remember his name, but he was like, "We should have gone with you," which is good to hear.
You know,
but anyways, and then like prior to that, I'd done a test on like the Cleveland show, which, you know, at the time I would have taken any job, but I was grateful,
right,
honestly, that I didn't get that one. But yeah, so it was my third like real test. But you know, that one, God, I think I actually it drew that test on the Cintiq at Cosmic Toast.
Yes, I think I remember that.
Because I didn't have one. I couldn't afford one.
Because it was like after hours, right? Like you could stay and like people would be there like all hours of the night.
Yeah.
Doing God knows what.
Yeah. And actually I think it was also they were in the middle of, it's like, so I was being paid, but then they were like, oh, the studio needs to go on like hiatus except for like essential personnel, which seemed to be like everybody except me.
Oh no.
but they were like, you know, you're welcome to come in and like work on stuff. And they're, you know, it's like, look, if you want to work on like trying to find another job, like you can do that here. That's fine or whatever. So I was like, okay. And yeah, I boarded it digitally and, yeah, it's like, I felt pretty good about it all told. And,
you showed it to me too. I remember when you showed it to me, you're like, you like, check this out, because you were like kind of unsure, and I looked at it and I said like, dude, this is it. Because the thing I liked about your boards too is like, I love that your drawing style actually was in there, you know, because I love the way you would draw too, because, you know, again, there was action, but it still had that nice kind of cartoon sheen to it. Like you weren't ashamed of your cartoon roots, you know, or a lot of board artists try to like get away from it, and, you know, get very, I don't know, but
yeah, it's kind of, it also helps too, you know, sometimes if you do a test and it's on a show that, you know, the show hadn't come out yet, so I didn't know, like, I mean, I knew the Ninja Turtles, of course, but I didn't know like necessarily what the vibe of the show is or what the finished stuff would really look like. And so I was just kind of like, well, I'll do this how I would like to do this, which I feel is like good advice in general. If you ever find yourself like with a board test, you know, if it's a really established series or something, if it's like season 5, then, you know, it might behoove you to
really study
like kind of see what the show is. But if it's something new, if it's something that's never been heard of, like, don't be afraid to just be like, well, here's how I would do it if it's my show. Like, don't like countermand the instructions you've been given. But if it's just like, you know, if they don't really tell you like what these characters can do visually or whatever, like, don't be afraid to just do whatever. And they can always like pull you back, but at least now they really see like, oh, like this is what he can bring to the table. But yeah, it's, you know, I felt pretty good about the test, and, you know, I was of course like super stoked to finally break into the industry. You know, it's unfortunate that my time on Turtles was kind of like it's funny, in like my 13 years, my first job was sort of like my worst one.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. Like obviously I was green, to be sure, but the show was kind of infamous for just kind of how it operated internally, and I don't know. I don't want to like spill tea about the show.
Very so it was just kind of like a very chaotic kind of like environment or something.
Yeah, there was just like the like how Zero kind of runs the show. It was just kind of like, I don't know. It's far enough away now. It was toxic.
Zero being the sort of genesis of the style, right? The actual like visual kind of style that they were going after.
A lot of it, yeah. So yeah, it's like there were basically two producers on the show. It was like Ciro Nieli and Ant Ward. Ant is great. I love Ant.
Oh yeah.
We actually became like good friends like long after the show.
Oh wow.
But and there's Ciro. Basically, like Ciro handled the story and art side of things, and Ant handled the CG side of things.
Got it.
It was this divide and conquer strategy. And this was also what I didn't realize at the time, what nobody realized at the time. I think Turtles was a real genesis of like the way that storyboarding would be done for the next, like 10, 15 years.
Wow.
Because artists came in there. So like you got Sheldon Vella, you had JJ Conway, I guess Kevin Molino even like ended up on that show at some point. But like these board artists who just like, and with digital tools, they practically animated the show, and they remade the show kind of in their own image, in a way that like Zero was very on board with, but was kind of like hard for everybody else. There was like kind of like a handful of like really amazing, incredible board artists, and then kind of a sense that like, if you couldn't be like them, you were in trouble.
I see.
And it was very hard as a revisionist.
Yikes.
Trying to, it's like I wanted to get bumped up to board artists, but the revisionists who were becoming board artists, or the board artists who were coming in, it's like they were doing stuff that I was just not capable of. And like even today, like I'm honestly like not, it's, but I was trying so hard, but
yeah.
So I just kind of like wallowed as this board revisionist for like 2 years on the show, because I didn't have enough of a network. Like what I should have done very early on was just moved on. I should have been like, you know what, like,
right,
I'm not your guy. I'm gonna find something else and I'm gonna move on. But I didn't have that. I couldn't jump ship. There was no ship to jump.
And not only that, you just come out of like, financial crisis, prior to that. Now you're, making a steady paycheck. I'm sure, you guys maybe upgraded to a nicer place, and, had some, nice things, and,
Yeah. Oh yeah. And my confidence was very much shot at that point too. But I was very grateful for, my coworker, Chong Lee, who, we kind of commiserated a bit on the show, but he helped me hop over to Titmouse for Randy Cunningham.
Wow.
And it was funny because I was coming on there, and so I was going to interview, and they were like really impressed with my resume, because like, oh, you worked on the 2012 Ninja Turtles. Oh my goodness. Like, it's like I was kind of like riding the wave that other board artists had created, and they were worried that I was going to be like such a powerful action guy, because Randy was more like action comedy, and they were worried that I was going to be like too action or something. But I was like, no. I'm happy to do comedy. I preferred doing the comedy. I didn't really want to do the action anyways. But, I had to convince them. But
did you have to test for it, or was it sort of they just invited you on because they knew who you were and where you came from?
I don't think I tested. I think they just they were happy to bring me on. Some Sean had vouched for me, and God, I don't think I tested.
And for those of you out there who don't know what testing is, it's sort of like an actor auditioning for a role, which is a very normal process in acting, but in what we do, television animation or feature, a test is basically just a way for them to see if you can draw on a style, if you're able to kind of continue to, be able to sort of work within the ecosystem of a show. And I'm guessing they again saw your work and were like, hey, we're happy to just have somebody from TMNT on the series, and they're probably like, hey, we don't need to rock the boat, and then maybe you go to another place. But was your earbud okay? Sorry if it is dying or anything. Feel free to just use your normal audio from your computer if that's easier.
Yeah. Hopefully, one of my earbuds died. I thought they charged up, but I was like, I had it charging all day, but one of them just sort of gave out. But if you can still hear me, okay.
I hear you. I hear you perfect. By the way,
good old lefty's still holding strong. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's it took me once I was on Randy Cunningham, I really started to grow as a board artist, but it took a good, I don't know how many months to kind of get my confidence back. Because again, I was at a really low point.
Wow.
At the time, just I don't know if I can, am I actually any good? Because I was not being told that at Turtles, and once I was boarding on Randy, they were all really happy with what I was doing. The producers loved what I was doing, the directors loved what I was doing, but I genuinely I didn't believe them. At the beginning. I thought they were just sort of they don't want to say it to my face, but I'm sure once I leave the room, they're like, oh my God, what are we going to do about this guy? Oh my God, why did we hire this guy? It's it took me several episodes before I was like, maybe
you're doing okay.
Maybe I do kind of know what I'm doing.
Nice.
And then from then on, I was doing fine as a board artist, and
so really project after project, sort of back to back work.
Yeah.
What was your process? And I get this question a lot from people, especially on LinkedIn now. So you're an established board artist, you're not necessarily even really having to test anymore. How are you lining jobs up? Were people just automatically offering you things, or were you they always want to know what that strategy is to keep working? Did you have one, or was it just sort of falling into your lap?
I mean, honestly, I think part of my strategy in hindsight was that Netflix had a lot of money to spend. And I mean, really, so it's I got Nickelodeon thanks to you, and I got
thanks to you. But I didn't take that.
Oh, but I mean, that's the thing. It's always ultimately it's always kind of somebody kind of it's everybody kind of wonders about I don't know all these people, how do I get in the door? But there's always a million doors. You kind of it's not about sort of trying to get in with the big names. It's about the people who are right there with you, and then one of them kind of moves up a little bit, and they're like, hey, you should really check out my friend, and then you help each other out, and
word of mouth.
You're the big guy,
so it's almost word of mouth at that point, right?
Pretty much. So I after Titmouse, Trong actually helped me secure my next job because he went over to DreamWorks, which was starting DreamWorks TV.
Wow.
Again, it was just like this huge vehicle for Netflix. They were just like, dumping gobs of money for content for Netflix. And he was like, you should come over. And he helped me get onto Dawn of the Croods. And once I was at DreamWorks, like I really, like my network really exploded. Suddenly, like I just, I was working with all these people and all these people knew me. And so it's like I was on Croods for close to 2 years. And when that was wrapping up, Ben Joano, who was on a different show there, Puss in Boots, had like, I don't know, somehow my work had found its way to him, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to come to Disney TV with me for Big Hero 6 the series?" And I was like, wow. Sure, why not? And
twist my
like
arm.
So I was like, sure. I was like so done with cavemen and rocks that I was like, Big Hero 6 sounds amazing. I would love to do action and robots and fighting and
nice.
Stuff. So I did that. It was a good crew. It wasn't a super exciting show for me. And so I ended up jumping ship like after about 9 months or so. It was just like, wow. Yeah, like I don't want to like badmouth the show. And it just wasn't my like cup of tea, but I finally got to do the thing that I wish I could have done on Turtles, which is that like, I can decide that, what, not for me.
Right.
I'm out of here. Like they were happy with my work, but I was just like, I kind of miss DreamWorks. And, sure enough, it was like, I knew so many people at DreamWorks, people who knew people that they were able to be like, hey, like, you want to come do Three Below, which was the Troll Hunters sequel.
Wow.
And I was like, sure, sounds great. And I came back to DreamWorks, and stuck around there for a while. Like after Three Below, when that wrapped, actually there wasn't quite anything lined up, but they wanted to keep me bad enough that they put me on what was called the Hub at the time as a Hub ninja. So they had this like group of in-house artists and animators for when, like a lot of stuff is outsourced, of course.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like you want to have really strong in-house talent for things
just in case, and so, right? Something happens.
Yeah. So it was basically like hiring a freelancer, except that you're just like always there. So I would just hop from show to show, and it'd be like, oh, can you come? Sometimes I might help board a whole episode. Sometimes I might just come in, to tackle a few scenes for them. Sometimes they bring me on basically as a revisionist, which I was fine with, honestly. Like sometimes it was just nice to be like, you spend a couple weeks just being a revisionist. Like, yeah, just tell me exactly what to do. And I'll do it.
You
like,
could just
you want
draw.
me to clean these up?
Everybody talks crap about revisions, but I'm telling you, could just draw. Put your headphones on, like all the stuff's thought out for you, and just do your thing. Just have fun, Like,
yeah, no, totally, yeah. But yeah, so it's like I did that for a while until they brought me on to like another show, and so it's like I just kept knowing people, and there would always be something lined up.
Can I ask you a question? Like, what about the tools? Did the tools from Turtles to, the stuff you're doing on DreamWorks, this portion of your career, had you started off, like, for instance, like in Photoshop, and then did that evolve into like other software? Like, did you work in Flash or Adobe Animate or Storyboard Pro? Like, what was that?
Yeah, it was Photoshop on Turtles, and then Storyboard Pro on most everything else. It was Photoshop on Three Below, although some of us kind of like mutinied a little bit, and we're like, we're just going to use Storyboard Pro. It's like Storyboard Pro is such a I mean, it's built for storyboarding.
Right.
If you use Photoshop, you kind of have to like hack your way around it, and it's a real pain if you need to like tweak things. I always tend to like frame a little tight, and it's just nice to be able to like, just take the entire scene and just go whoop.
Yeah.
And with Photoshop, it's like a nightmare to try to do that.
And being that one is vector, vector environment, which, is a lot lighter, than Photoshop, which is, all these pixels that are a lot heavier and a lot less. But I think we've always done that with Photoshop, right? Like, wasn't it for photographers at some point, and then we just, as artists, all kind of like took over Photoshop and said like, well, it's going to do what we want it to do now, and we're going to like force its hand.
You kind of have to like, there were a lot of different ways. So like, we would use like Photoshop and Bridge and do stuff like layer comps to be able to sort of like
Bridge. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
to do the click through
step through.
Yeah. And if for those of you who don't know, storyboarding is kind of approached, I guess we could say, in two ways, right? You have an audio track where you can actually like in Storyboard Pro do full edits and create what are called animatics, which is sort of like a little mini cartoon, so to speak, with audio and stuff. And then there's the I don't know, maybe it's my own term, but it's just, I call it the click through, where it's like more traditionally just drawings that have no audio, and you're literally just hitting a button and watching, these pictures in sequence. Sometimes maybe even doing your own voice over on top of these drawings to pitch, to somebody. Is that a fair way of saying how things are kind of done?
Yeah, pretty much. It's with like Storyboard Pro, you can really do it all in one, because you can bring the audio tracks in, you can time to the audio tracks, which is like, it's great for. I mean, it's great for timing to audio, or like doing character acting to audio. On the other hand, though, it's like, now that's your job. Because that's the thing. We've, board artists today are doing so much more drawing compared to, board artists in like the 90s or whatnot. Just like raw panel count. You look at old boards for like Batman the Animated Series or something,
so
like
different.
A few hundred panels or something. It's got the whole thing.
Wow.
But for us, it could be like thousands of panels. And now with like a lot of artists that were coming out of Ninja Turtles, where
you can say it. Yeah, Kevin Molina, you can say it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Kevin, Sheldon, them. It's like the stuff they're doing is amazing, but if they are effectively like, they're animating. They're,
I famously said, because Alan, when I think Rise was starting, like showed me Kevin's intro to Rise, and I said, this guy's going to ruin storyboarding. And I said it in the most affectionate way because it's so brilliant and so good. But I'm like, wait a second, we're all going to have to animate the camera now? Like literally do full animate. Like, this is so far from like, again, 3D camera being, like literally like flybys and like, watching a character like literally jump and hop and go blah, 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 all through this stuff, which, God bless it, it's amazing. But I mean, I got a family, I got a wife, like I got to get home at some point.
No, it is. It's like, it's interesting to see the way that, so much control is been given over to the board artists. It's like a lot of responsibility has been piled onto board artists over the years. It's like going from like, okay, not just like the drawings, but also like kind of the staging and the layout and the timing and the dialogue and like all this stuff. And now it's just sort of like, you know what, just like kind of make the show. And that also means it's like they, like the board artists start to impart their own sensibilities, because you know, if you ever get a chance to see some of, like, you know, again, like Sheldon's or Kevin's boards for the 2012 Ninja Turtles, it really feels a lot like what Rise of the TMNT would become.
Wow.
But they were boarding for a show that was not built for it. It was not built for that kind of animation, but they did it anyways. And again, like Zero was just sort of like, this is so cool, do it. And CG's like desperately trying to, like, you know, fit this square peg into this round hole, this like kind of incompatible animation, and make it work. You know, it makes sense that they were like, you know what, let's just give them their own show. And,
yeah, like just go.
You know, it was like it was like the board artists kind of dictated the style of the show, and it wasn't the other way around. And I think a lot of animation that you're seeing these days, where you see these like insane action sequences, and you see it a lot, especially in like commercials for video games of all things. Like you watch like the Overwatch or the Riot Games commercials and stuff. Like the board artists decided how this was going to look. They decided how it was going to be timed. You know, it was that like frenetic Kaneda style animation, that pose to pose kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, they were not told how to do it. They're just like, this is how we want to do it. And
wow.
they've kind of like,
the inmates have gotten hold of the asylum type of thing, right? Like
they have. It's like they kind of rebuilt animation in their own image a little bit.
And you weren't necessarily interested in that kind of style then. You were like, were you interested in more just like the storytelling from, you know, less of like a, you know, really intensive, you know, 3D camera? Like I said, I loved watching it, but I know if like someone had offered it to me, I'd say I'm not the right person for this. Like, it's just not in my sort of thing of things I'd want to actually do.
Yeah, for me, you know, I mean, the thing about those like big fight sequences, like whenever I would happen to be handed like a fight sequence on some show or whatever, I was never super into them, because like oftentimes the story just was like put on hold for a bit. Like ideally in a fight sequence, like the fight sequence should continue the story in some way. Like, you know, it's like I always tell people like Kung Fu Panda is like a masterclass in like storytelling. And if you look at the fight sequences in that, it's like it has this way of like the story is continuing to be told in some way when characters are fighting. But a lot of like TV action sequences, it tends to be just sort of like, okay, put the story aside and let's just do cool stuff for a while.
Right.
And you know, looking at it with that eye, you know, I see a lot of these action sequences, and I'm sort of like, I kind of seen this before. Like, they look really cool, but I have seen like, you know, I've seen this backflip a million times. I've seen this like bouncing off the wall thing a million times. I've seen this like, you know, that thing where like a character just sort of like flashes into frame behind another character, and like another flash, and then the guy's been kicked in the back, and like you see it all, and it's just sort of like, you know,
it loses some of its.
It looks, it's like it looks cool, but like, what happened to the story?
Yeah, like we've gone into like this like, you know, nether realm of just like beating people up, and I think again, like I said, you know, it was interesting to see these like touchstones, you know, in the art of storyboarding, and how again sometimes the technology maybe allowed these things to happen, you know, and allowed board artists the most freedom they've probably ever had, but that's not always a great thing, you know. Sometimes it can just, you know, take us to places that, like you said, maybe are taking us a little bit away from the story. and we're just like, oh, we got this cool Ferrari. Let's just floor it, and see what happens,
Yeah, no, it was wild seeing, back on the 2012 show when I'd see the board artist pitching and just seeing this like night and day difference between like a board artist like Sheldon and even some of the directors. Where like Sheldon would come in and he'd just be like tap 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 tap, and of course he'd like just add a lot of like, and then he does this thing, and he'd really like play it up, and then you'd get to like
what's his
the next guy who's not.
What's his blog called? His blog is called gosh, it's something with the Blackwing blog or something, and he has a collection of all his storyboards in it, and he's got like all like movie stuff that he's done, and like you could literally go through and just, I think he works in he's got to work in Photoshop because his stuff looks way crazy. I don't know if he does work in Storyboard Pro, but
I think he's all Storyboard Pro.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean he was doing this in Photoshop too. Like he'd never get hit his deadlines, but it was like it was definitely a time when like it was a point of pride to not go home.
Oh,
and they just like they'd be there all night, and then
ouch, yeah.
Like they would, it's like they'd finally pitch, and then they'd give themselves like Monday off, the Monday after a pitch off, like a treat to themselves, and then they'd be back at it again. But then suddenly, like that was kind of expected. Like no one would say that was expected, but of course they'd be like much.
Yeah,
they were obviously like much happier with the people who did 1,000 panels versus the guy who did like a normal amount.
I think again, like it just got a little bit crazy, so you're at the heights of your career, everything's going good, and then would you say like around the time of COVID, things explode even more? I mean, was there like so much work coming at you around the time of COVID that it just for me personally, I felt COVID was sort of the beginning of the bubble that started to kind of like, I remember just having so many things to the point, I don't know if this happened to you, but like I had just gotten onto LinkedIn around like 2019-ish, and thought it was the ugliest thing I'd ever seen too. I'm like, what a boring place, and everyone's like, no, you got to be on there. But I noticed in my direct messages, I started getting like not recruiters, but people who would find work and like Sony or like any of these places present it to me. They would get a finder's fee. I would actually get to work on whatever it was. Didn't have to test. They didn't take anything from my paycheck, and I would just basically like have like these people like kind of like headhunting me. This is again just like right around that COVID time, and I remember just having to turn stuff down, which I hated doing. I hated like wasting anything, or I'd just be like, hey, well then just go give it to my buddy or something, But did COVID sort of like obviously like you and me had grown up in an era where we are at the studio, like you get up and you go to work, sort of a boomer, kind of thing. Yeah. And then suddenly you're at home. Like, what was that experience during COVID?
I was in the middle of, I was working on Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous at the time, and like everything was going great. It was like the ride's never going to end, and then the COVID stuff was happening, and like everybody, they were just saying like, it should just be a couple of weeks, like we're just going to quarantine for a couple of weeks, and then COVID became COVID, but yeah, it was like animation felt kind of ascendant at that moment, where it was like, wow, I really backed the right horse here because we were the only game in town. We kind of just kept working without really missing a beat. I think we didn't really fall behind schedule at all.
Nice.
I scored a free, really expensive office chair from DreamWorks. It was like they were like, you can buy these, and I did all this stuff to like buy one at a discount from them, and they sent me one, and they never actually billed me for it.
Oh,
like,
nice.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll cut that part out right now in case Dreamworks is listening.
But it was like going great, and then once things were calming down COVID wise, and interest rates went up to try to like kind of counteract the really hot economy from all the like everything. Suddenly places like Netflix and Hulu and all of them, like they just weren't getting the kind of venture capital money that they were throwing in. Because that's the thing, and I didn't really realize it until this point, was that pretty much like most of my career was built on like venture capital money. It was places like Netflix and Hulu that they weren't so much interested in profits yet, or like it was all about subscriber counts. They were throwing money. They just wanted to be able to say, it's like, look, we have more stuff. We have stuff from DreamWorks. We have stuff from wherever. Like, just come, subscribe, be a subscriber. And, profitability was that thing that would come later.
Much
like
later.
With places like Uber or Airbnb or whatnot. And now with interest rates, when those went up, it was like suddenly they just, it was, it wasn't worth a venture capitalist money necessarily to just like throw it at Netflix. So they were cutting things way back, like the Netflix, their animation studio, like all but shut down. A bunch of stuff at DreamWorks was kind of getting like canceled or moved overseas. Like I was.
And when you say overseas, traditionally,
I know I always say overseas.
Well, like things had like, at least in my era, had gone traditionally to Asia, like, basically like largely non-English speaking countries. And it was sort of important that you held on to English speaking, people here, so we could fix anything that might have gone a little haywire. But did you notice now there was like Australia, there's Canada, like English speaking places, which I don't know, maybe they're making, a bit less than what they had to pay artists like you and me here in the States. And maybe saying, hey, we could save a few bucks, and they speak English,
I think it was a confluence of things. One, of course, is like tax incentives. It's like studios will practically get paid to hire artists from, places like Canada or Australia, or even other states like New York would have tax incentives. And then also, it's like there was kind of this English speaking talent elsewhere in the world. And I think finally we reached a point where like Los Angeles didn't have the monopoly on talent that it always used to have.
True.
Because that was the thing, it was kind of always understood, like, look, if you're going to, hire some studio in Taiwan or whatever, you're going to suffer for it. It's like the quality is going to go down because they're just like, they're not as talented as us who like went to Cal Arts or, we like
one of the bigger,
all these Disney veterans or whatever. Like the best talent is here in Los Angeles. And it's honestly just no longer the case. Like the like education in animation is like democratized to the point where like, no, there's like, there are really good artists everywhere. And so, that being the case, like, why not just hire whoever can work the cheapest? So like, it's hard now to kind of say. It's like, I know like the union's trying really hard to bring work back to Los Angeles, but I think it's going to be a tough road.
Oof, very tough.
Because it's like we can't be like, well, if you don't like it, well, maybe we'll just not work, and maybe we'll go on strike. And I don't think it's like holds as much weight as it used to.
That's another point. So like that started happening, and then I believe there was a writer's strike that also kind of slowed things down a little bit with some of the scripts. If I'm again not
Yeah. So, well, let's see. There was like a writer's strike and there was an actor's strike.
Oh, that's right. Two
And
strikes.
yeah, I know. I think so. In the TV world, it didn't necessarily affect things because TV animation writers are under like the Animation Guild generally. So like they were fine. And actually even like the Screen Actors Guild, TV animation generally was not under that
I see.
particular strike or anything.
Got it.
So it was kind of like okay there, but I feel like every 3 years, the Animation Guild gets like really close to striking, but we never quite do it. And I don't know. Like I know a lot of people are like really gung ho about striking and all that, but I also kind of it's a lot of like I don't know. It's a lot of things like working like. I understand, like, okay, DreamWorks is cutting back on what they're doing because Netflix is cutting back on what they're doing because, like, venture capitalists are cutting back on what they're doing. It's like, and it's hard to say that, like, oh, well, you gotta hire local.
Exactly. Like we became the sort of the local business that got swallowed up by these bigger businesses, and I guess that brings me to the eventual present day. So work starts slowing, not immediately at first, at least that was my experience, but things slowly started like, well, we're not really gonna do that anymore. I remember getting I had my last job, I think it was at Titmouse or Bento, I think it was Titmouse. And then I immediately got an offer to work on something, and they offered me $17 an hour. And I was so incensed and offended because I said, excuse me, like, I don't work for that, and in a weird way, I kind of felt like, entitled a little bit. Like I felt like I had done so much in my career that it was sort of owed to me at this point. Like they should be laying things at my feet in a way. And I guess like once it's sort of gone, it really does kind of, or at least for me, it humbled me a lot, where I felt like I hadn't appreciated how fortunate I was for me 25 years working consistently and paying my bills and having all these things while doing something I love and meeting people like you who I really admire. So in a way, I can definitely say if there was something really good that came out of this experience, was just the absolute appreciation for what we have. I don't know if that, obviously anger, that I waste my life, but like all these like emotions, this roller coaster. But at the end of the day, like I still feel so lucky and so fortunate to like have even had the opportunity to live my dream, even if it was for only a few years, whatever. And looking back at it now, like where it feels like, oh man, that was so far, 3 years, 2023 for me, and I'm like, man, like.
Yeah,
it feels so far back now, which is so weird.
It feels like, because the thing is, I was, and I can't remember exactly like when it would have started. Maybe around like the time I was working on Jurassic or something, or even before that. I was really sort of wrestling with like, like, am I still enjoying this? Like, am I still having a good time?
Wow.
I was kind of always frustrated that I was never quite working on a show
that I was passionate about. It was like I worked on shows that, like, it's funny, Dawn of the Croods was actually one of my favorite shows to work on because, like, the people were awesome, the writers were great, it was a really, like, open, friendly atmosphere, but I also understand, like, the show was just sort of, like, lost to, it's still out there on Netflix, of course, but it was, it existed to just drum up interest in time for the sequel.
You're right, right.
Which ended up getting shelved for a couple of years anyway. So, but and doing stuff like that, and then like Big Hero 6, the series, I was like really excited at first. Like once I was like kind of saw what the show was, I was just like, this isn't exciting for me. And but I kept doing it. I kept trying to find ways to like, okay, like make this fun for me. Even if I'm not necessarily like passionate about the show. And then, I was getting very good at being like a board artist for these kinds of shows on TV. And, more and more my job was becoming like, it was cleanup. It was less about creative decisions and more about just making sure that the overseas animator is going to know exactly what you want, because it's kind of an adversarial relationship with your overseas vendors, because they're going to do the absolute bare minimum amount of work that they can get away with, which is fair to them. It's like they're only getting paid so much. And it's like they want to take your shot and they want to get it done, and they're not going to make any like creative leaps. They're not going to swing for the fences, because also
unless like, they're flying bark, right? Unless they're them, but no, I'm kidding.
Well, that's the thing. Like sometimes if you get like really top tier vendors or something, and you pay them for that, and you pay them for that creativity, but like a lot of this sort of lower budget stuff, it's like they're going to stick to the boards, because if they don't, even if they're trying to make like something like a better creative choice, if the studio doesn't like it, then they can say, well, that's not what's on the board. You got to redo it, and you got to redo it on your dime.
Wow.
And so like they're like both sides, the studio and the vendors, are trying to just like not get pulled into retakes. And so it's frustrating that so much of my job was just like, okay, like, for me, it's like, oftentimes I feel like I got the idea across like in the thumbnail, I was like, exactly what I'm going for in like these 3 quick drawings, anybody can like look at this and know.
Right.
And I really want to move on, because now like the most creative part I've done, but now it's like, no, now I gotta clean this up. I gotta add some like A/B poses and to make sure like proportions are like the all this.
The monotony of
it's like I was on Dragons the Nine Realms, and it was kind of like soul crushing how much I had to, because it's a show about kids and their dragons, and the kids all have different sizes. The dragons all have all different shapes and sizes, and you cannot guess at the proportions to each other or whatever when you're staging a shot, because again, like the overseas vendors, they're not going to do you any favors. And so it got to the point where I was like, so many of the shots I was just setting up in Blender. I'd take the models in, and I'd frame the shot, and I put them exactly where they need to be. I'd take a screen grab, and I do that, and I just like oh god, I was like, do I want to keep doing this?
Yeah, like honestly, like that seems like, again, you're back to square one, where they're like, hey, do you want to do CG? And you're like, no, I don't want to do CG. Like, I want to draw.
Yeah. So,
wow.
And yeah, so like once, so like I went from Camp Cretaceous to Dragon's Nine Realms, and from Dragon's Nine Realms onto the Bad Guys TV series, which is like finally premiering it on Netflix.
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm excited to watch it. So I did like The Bad Guys. That was a really fun.
The movies were fantastic.
Yeah, really
I kind of did it. I took the job because they were basically offering me that or the sequel to Camp Cretaceous. The Jurassic was a safer bet, but I really love that movie, and I really wanted to draw those characters. So it was fun to draw. And I was hoping like maybe if I do a good enough job, it will like get Pierre's attention and it'll bring me out. It didn't happen, but but I did that. And like, as I sort of realized that the industry, that's when I finally was really realizing that the industry was drying up and that there wasn't really going to be anything for me coming up. And they also, on Bad Guys, they took our last 2 episodes from us and sent them overseas.
Wow.
So I suddenly realized, like, oh, I thought I had like 2.5 months to figure things out. I actually have like a few weeks. And so I figured, like, I really wanted to finally make the leap over to the feature. Is like something like I always wanted to try it.
Yeah.
And so I spent those last few weeks, like I'd go to the studio just so I could go over to the feature side of things and just talk to everybody. And at the time I was pretty hopeful because there were like 4 different features going on in at different stages, and they were all sort of like, yeah, as soon as we get the green light or as soon as we get to the next thing, we'd love to have you on.
Whoa.
So I was feeling like, okay, cool. Like this will be fine. Like maybe I'll just take like a month off or so, and then they'll like, feature will come rescue me, and I'll be fine. And I'll finally get to do like exciting boards or something.
Find that creative fulfillment.
But then like one by one, each of those projects
just fizzled out.
Just fizzled. And it was that sort of period where it's like, okay, like the first couple of months you feel like, well, I'm sure something will come along. Yeah. And then like the next few months you're sort of like, okay, maybe I need to like start thinking. I was lucky to I actually did get a little bit of like feature boarding experience from Studio Anima, this studio in Mexico City.
Oh, nice.
They offered me like, I did a handful, like maybe like a month's worth on there doing a punch up for this movie that might never see the light of day, but it like they paid me my rate. Wow. I was like, I just went ahead and gave them my rate, and I was a little nervous because again they were like in Mexico or something. They're like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, they were like,
should ask for more.
I know. But yeah, it's like I did that a little bit, which helped, and then Ant from Turtles gave me a couple episodes on Transformers.
Very nice.
Which got me like through a summer, like the summer of 24 or something. Or is it summer 25?
Very nice.
But I was just sort of like all my friends were out of work. All the people that I would look to for jobs were out of work.
Yeah.
So like, it was like the producers and the directors were out of work, and some of them were just moving on to new things. And I'd look at LinkedIn, and I was kind of doing the LinkedIn game, and it was just so miserable.
Yeah.
It's just like the most soul-wrenching thing, applying to like through the Disney website or the Sony website, and you send them all this stuff, and then you get the email that's like, oh, you don't quite meet our qualifications.
Like just like, the soulless, like...
and just doing that over and over. And then like seeing people who are like, oh yeah, I have my Google sheet of like, here's the like 1,000 people that I've applied to, and I've like keep a checklist of like, have they replied? Have they done this? I was like, I don't want to do that. It's not worth it to me. And, and all this and for a job that I might not honestly want to do anymore. And so, in some ways I'm kind of still grieving, but I finally made the decision, or my wife and I made the decision. Mm-hmm. We moved up to Sonoma now, just this summer. And
wow,
because she took a job as she had kind of pivoted a few years before to teaching at a Waldorf school as a handwork teacher.
Wow.
And she found like good successes doing that. And there was a school up here in Sonoma that really wanted her, and it was also just a great school for our daughter Harper. And
amazing.
At first I was sort of like, I'm not quite ready. I'm not quite ready to do that. That's like a major change. And then, I don't know, like this past February, we went up and we visited, and I just kind of like, I think it's time.
I saw this post on LinkedIn, which, is really incredibly written. And, it didn't have anything that was like angry or, like, poor me or anything like that. It was just such a wonderful, just like this, interview, just beautifully introspective. I mean, just saying, hey, I looked at, deep within myself and realized, like, I mean, I don't want to misquote it because it was so wonderfully written, but it really touched me when I read that. I was just like, wow, like that was just so honest. And it didn't have to be something. I've read lots of people's who were just absolutely spewing anger, and just complete like, and I felt those angry feelings. But then when I read what you wrote, I mean, it just was so graceful, and like you didn't, like I said, like you put it down. You laid your sword down versus like, it was taken from you, which it can never truly be taken from you. But I just, again, I thought it was so wonderfully done, and just so beautiful to see you move on to something new where maybe, like I said, that passion can now be into something different, or, that your talent can be used in a totally new way.
No, totally. I was like, I wrote it definitely from like a place that was just sort of like, grief moving into acceptance. And but it's funny, I do feel sort of torn between like these dueling narratives where it's like, I kind of like to say that, what, I moved on from animation, and I decided to like take a risk, and because I was like tired of doing this or whatever, it's like I wanted a new chapter in my life, which is kind of true. But also at the same time, like I never would have done it if I wasn't forced into it.
Wow.
It's like, I mean, even today, if somebody like called and offered me work, yes, okay, maybe, yeah, you got, sure, I'd be happy to.
Just one more last,
yeah, like just sort of how much my, I had this, I felt like I had reached a point where I was like, what, I'm not defined by my job. Or, it's like my self-worth doesn't come from my job. I thought that was the case until I no longer had a job, and I realized, oh wait, my self-worth is very much tied up in my my career and my title, and being able to like tell people like, I work at Dreamworks, and they immediately like, wow, like having that, it's like being the artist in elementary school all over again. But I think it's like, and I'm still wrestling with it. I'll wrestle with it for some time to come, but I do feel like, I'm, in some ways I'm trying to like pick back up where I left off, like in middle school,
Whoa.
Like,
wow.
Sort of, yeah. And that's also partly why I more and more I've been rejecting like digital art.
Wow.
and part of it's spurred by like the whole AI stuff as well, because it's like, I don't know, that's a whole other thing. But basically, you know, I've used, you know, computers as such a crutch for my work for so long, you know, and you know how there's like that always that kind of like gap between like what you can do on the computer versus what you can do in Sketchbook, you know, and sometimes it's like it's little, and sometimes it's like this huge gap.
I don't have any of my tricks, you know. I have so many digital tricks
I know,
to hide behind, and then like
it's like you don't have undo, you don't have like vector lines, and it's like it's all stuff that's like you know, if there's really like a big gap between what you can do on a computer and what you can do on paper, then it stands to reason that it's not really like
who you are,
you that's making the art. It's like it's the computer that's making the art, and you're learning how to talk to the computer. And it's true, like so much of it, it's, you know, so much of what I know about how to make art comes from like tutorials where it's like, all right, you set your multiply layer, and now you do this shadow layer and set it to multiply 50%, and then you do like all this stuff to avoid like actually learning how to like mix color and put it on
and do it,
you know. And just do it.
I don't know if traditionally, like this is how I draw now. Like I use Copic markers, and I use like a number 0 or like, you know, cool gray 1 or 2. That's all my underdrawing is just straight from marker, and then I go, you know, on top of that with like a Copic 100 black. Then, you know, I use cheap markers, but I will say this, like when I'm with my daughter and she sees me doing stuff on paper, it's so much more of a connection, because I feel like, and her thing, what she does now too, is she'll take her pen or whatever crayon and she'll draw over anything I draw. And my wife immediately freaks out. She's like, what? Don't let her do that. And I have to stop my wife and I say, no, I need her to do that because she feels she's now contributing to what she sees on that page. And I want her to build that confidence that, yes, your contribution is valuable to this finished product. You know, you can't mess it up, you know, and maybe like computers and using, again, Photoshop and all these like different software things, it is created an environment where we don't mess up. You know, we can go back in time as many times as we want and fix something and reshape it any way we want. But there's something so beautiful about going to paper and having the first time seeing what happens, like actually being vulnerable to say, oh crap, you know, like what do I do now? You know, I can't go back. Now I got to kind of go with whatever just happened. And I don't know.
I mean, definitely like working on paper, it's a vulnerable act. And because with digital art, you know, you can really gloss over your flaws. Like you can appear to be a better artist than you are. And, you know, if you're somebody like me that really struggles with like, you know, keeping up that appearance of being,
right,
you know, a strong artist, then like, it's like you're like, oh, you know, I'm going to keep making lines until I get the right line, you know, or I'm gonna like use the scale tool because I always make the heads like too big or too small, or I'm gonna use overlay layers to, you know, fix all my colors because, you know, I can't figure out colors and stuff, and you can like, you know, really fake it.
I think Dave Grohl had said recently that he was very proud that he was sort of one of the last bands before digital really took over, and they're using tape. And he said he loved listening to his old records because they had so many flaws in them, so many human flaws and little hissing of a mic or like, you know, little things that like you can easily clean up digitally. But he said to me, that was the beauty of the music, is it was so human and it was so flawed, but that was so beautiful. We're human before we're artists. We're human before we're, technicians or any of this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice to go back to that and allow yourself to, this is me, this is, it's on the page. I can't fake this. I can't, make it look any better than what it's going to be on the page. Or my skills have to improve. My, actual,
I've been like something that's like not just exploring traditional media, but also I've been really looking more at artists that have like here's my art hot take for you to prepare yourself, that I feel like this generation of artists, and I'll include myself in there, of course, there's a huge glut of technical skill and not but kind of a deficit of things to say, in the sense that like some of the artists that I really am inspired by these days are artists who are not necessarily that technically adept, in the sense that like there's really like clear anatomy, really clear shading, or like lighting, stuff like that.
Wow.
So artists like Quentin Blake, but also there's artists like Ken Nomura, who is like, his stuff is amazing, but it's like it looks so simple and so loose, but it just like I can't get enough of it.
Wow.
There's there's a comic that I really like called Sad Girl Space Lizard.
Oh, nice title.
by Iggy Craig. It's a little adult. Like it deals with some like adult stuff, but it's hard to like. I think you would call it naive art, maybe. If you were like an art critic or something. But it's just like, I love it so much. I love the art so much.
Wow.
Because it's clear, and I've been more focused these days on just like clarity above all else. And it's like a simple drawing that just like really communicates well. Or like Casey Green, the comics that he does. He's the guy who did the This Is Fine dog.
Nice.
Probably seen, but he does a lot of like other comics and stuff. But it's like, he works in that style, but there can be so much like emotion and storytelling in what he does, even in this style. Like, it's not a hindrance or anything. It's like, I don't know. It's like it's his voice, and it just comes through loud and clear. And it's really encouraged me to like kind of just put away the anatomy books and put away this like, the online classes and stuff, and just be like, God,
just be an artist again.
Yeah. And I think with like AI and everything too, it's like, I sometimes joke, it's like AI is making me a better artist, but not like that. Just in that, it's like, if you feel like the key to being an artist is to just like have really strong technical skills, then like, yeah, the AI's got you beat. But if you want to, like, it's never going to like speak in your voice. It's never going to like, it's never going to tell your story. And you really have to focus on that. Like, now more than ever, like, it's not a game of like proving that, all the bones, that all the forms. It's about like, who are you? Like, what do you have to say? And the good news is we all have something to say. We all have something, unique within us, and it just might take more teasing out than others, and I'm working on it too. It's like so much of my work has been wound up in just like trying to be strong technically or trying to look like other artists.
And now it's like in this season, maybe this is the time where we can do the most meaningful work of our career. You've done your dream, you've achieved what you set out to do, since middle school. But that doesn't mean you only have one dream. There's many more dreams that you can achieve. And, you're only in your 40s, which is, you're still extremely young. I'm in my 40s too. And I say to myself, like, I've never been more free. I've never had more freedom to do things, like this podcast or, just talk to, people that I admire and look up to. And again, like I said, your story in particular, I was lucky enough to like be a part of, at these little particular times, but it affected me, man. You really affected me in a great way. And, I think through this, a lot of newer, artists coming into the industry or just, people who maybe worked with you at some point, can find some closure in a little bit of change. I realized that about myself, that I'm not good with change. And I realized that change doesn't care what I'm comfortable with because it's coming whether I like it or not. So I feel like in this season of my life, I need to be more open to change and not fear it and not feel like everything's going to come crashing down because, like you said, we're not in this position of like, impressing people, Maybe we can try to impress ourselves a little bit and say, wow, we actually did say something creatively or artistically. We've gone almost 2 hours and 27 minutes. It was only supposed to be an hour, so again, I do not want to keep you any longer. But thank you so much, Max, for doing this. I truly appreciate your time and for you being just so honest. And for anybody who knows you, just that's such a wonderful part of your personality. That's really you. Like I think that's early on what I liked most about you. Your art, of course, is incredible, but I just loved how honest you always were with yourself, and never, boasted or, try to like, say, oh, I'm better than this, or, you know what I mean? Like you're just so down to earth and such a good guy. I feel like in this season of your life, like I can only be excited to see what you do.
Well, I've heard that your 40s are to prepare you for your 50s. Like this idea that like you kind of go, it's like you're going through your 20s again now. How it's like your 20s prepare you for your 30s when you like really take off. I've heard people say it's like, well, you spend your 40s and then you like hit your 50s and then you like take off again.
Wow.
I hope that's true.
Me too.
I do feel like one of the best things, the best advice I can give to anybody is like turn 40, because it's like it's like the best thing for my mental health was like turning 40, and it just suddenly like so much of the things that I thought were important like weren't anymore, and I feel like it's a little easier for me now to like make these kinds of changes in my life.
Amazing.
There's something to be said about it. It's like, you know what? Like, I'm 42, man. I don't have time for this. It's like it's hard to say when you're like in your 30s or something.
Right.
You're in the thick of it. You got to worry about everything, and you're like, what? Like I'm in my 40s. I'm turning my beard's turning gray. Like,
yeah.
Come on, man.
You've earned
for a little.
You've earned those white hairs. You've earned them.
Yeah.
But again, you're a father now and a husband, and there's so many more adventures to have with that. And again, like I said, it's just the beginning, in my opinion. So I'm going to be so excited to see what you decide to do. and hopefully it's a comic or something, because I'd love to purchase something that you do.
Yeah, no, I'm hoping. Yeah, like that's kind of where I'm moving, trying to finally like do that. It was sort of where I was going before I found animation. I had a web comic. It was actually like kind of becoming successful, and this was like in 98, 99, which was like the perfect time to start a web comic. But
wow.
I regret that I didn't keep it going. But
well, you got the rest of your 40s to make it happen.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Max. Again, please give my best to your family. And again, like I said, really cherish your friendship over the years. And again, man, just thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
No problem, buddy. You take care, my friend.
See ya.
All right. Take care, buddy. Bye.